Prince
The
William,
city
heir to the
sleeps,
British
but
throne,
duty
lives a
waits
life
for
that
no
looks
one.
glamorous from the outside.
Convoy in
But every
position,
single journey
secure
he
the
takes,
perimeter.
whether it is a short helicopter hop across the English countryside, or a long-haul flight to the other side of the world, is shaped decades of tradition, hard-learned lessons, and security protocols most people never think about. To understand how William secretly travels, you have to understand that for him, travel was never just about getting from one place to another. It has always been about survival, about protecting a bloodline, and about carrying the weight of history every time he boards a plane. William's relationship with travel and danger began in the most painful way imaginable. He was only 15 years old when his mother, Princess Diana, died in a car crash in a Paris tunnel while being pursued by photographers. That loss, and the knowledge that the seemingly unthinkable can happen, has stayed with him in every decision he makes about how his own family moves through the world. It is impossible to separate William's adult approach to travel security from that single, devastating night in 1997, and royal watchers have long said that his caution around cars, crowds, and public exposure traces directly back to it. For most of modern royal history, there has been an unwritten but deeply respected rule inside Buckingham Palace. Direct heirs to the throne are not supposed to travel on the same aircraft. William, as second in line to the throne, and his eldest son George, third in line, would traditionally be required to fly separately, along with Charlotte and Louis further down the line of succession. The rule exists for one grim reason. If a single plane were ever lost, the nation could not afford to lose multiple heirs to the crown in one catastrophe, so tradition demanded that the family split up whenever they flew, even if it meant more flights, more cost, and more logistical headaches for the household staff, arranging everything behind the scenes. But William has increasingly stepped away from that old rule, and royal watchers have taken notice. In recent years, he has been photographed boarding helicopters and planes, together with his children rather than splitting the family across separate aircraft the way tradition once demanded. Security expert Alex Bomberg, a former aide connected to Kensington Palace circles, has suggested this shift comes down to a public perception as much as anything else, noting that using two separate helicopters or planes for one family trip risks looking wasteful and out of touch in an era when the public scrutinizes royal spending closely. Buckingham Palace has pushed back gently on the idea that the old rule has been abandoned entirely, issuing statements defending helicopters as a key part of how the royal family plans its travel, but the pattern of William flying with George, Charlotte, and Louis together has become increasingly visible in recent years, a quiet signal that old protocols are bending under the weight of modern public opinion. When it comes to official state business, William's travel looks exactly the way most people imagine royal travel to look. For major, overseas tours and government-related engagements, he has access to a private jet operated by the Royal Squadron, along with the RAF Voyager, a modified Airbus A330 configured for VIP transport that the government maintains specifically for the Prime Minister, senior ministers, and the royal family. This aircraft allows William, and often Catherine, alongside him, to travel with a full security detail, communications equipment, and the kind of privacy that would be impossible on a scheduled commercial flight. These official trips are meticulously planned months in advance, coordinated between Kensington Palace, the Foreign Office, and the host country's own security services, with motorcades, secure routes, and carefully controlled arrival times designed to minimize any window of vulnerability. What surprises most people, though, is how often William chooses not to fly this way at all. Despite having access to private aircraft for official business, William and Catherine have become known within aviation circles for regularly booking themselves onto extraordinary commercial flights for personal, and even some official, trips, something few expected from a future king. According to a former flight attendant who has spoken publicly about serving the couple, royal protocol actually prevents William and Catherine from booking the highest cabin class available when they fly on scheduled commercial services, meaning that even when duty calls for discretion, they are not permitted to simply buy the most luxurious ticket on the plane. Instead, the couple has become closely associated with British Airways for their scheduled travel across Europe and the Atlantic, typically flying business class rather than first class, a choice that royal commentators have described as a deliberate effort to project a more restrained, relatable image of the monarchy, rather than one of untouchable luxury. Even more surprising to most people is William's documented history of flying on budget airlines. He has been spotted on multiple occasions boarding low-cost carriers, like Ryanair, both alone, and together with Catherine, seated among ordinary passengers with no visible fanfare at all. Royal watchers have noted that William has frequently used budget airlines for his travel, often sharing the cabin with regular passengers who had no idea they were sitting a few rows away from the future King of England. One particularly memorable sighting came back in 2015, when William was photographed disembarking a flight from Norfolk to Scotland, while completing his training with the East Anglian Air Ambulance, a job he held for several years flying emergency helicopter missions, before his royal duties expanded to take up all of his time. A fellow passenger managed to snap a photo of him quietly leaving the aircraft, proof that even a future king can occasionally slip through an airport, almost entirely unnoticed. So how does a man whose face is recognized by billions of people around the world manage to fly commercial without causing a scene? The answer lies in a combination of careful timing, low-key clothing, and a security team that works quietly in the background, rather than drawing attention with an obvious, visible presence. Royal Protection Officers, drawn from a specialized unit within London's Metropolitan Police, travel with William at all times, but on commercial flights, they typically dress like ordinary passengers, blend into nearby seats, and avoid any behavior that would signal to other travelers that someone important is on board. William himself has learned to dress down for these flights, favoring plain jackets, baseball caps, and casual clothing that lets him pass through airport security lines and boarding gates without the instant recognition a formal royal appearance would guarantee. Airlines that regularly host the couple have also learned, quietly and without fanfare, to manage boarding in ways that minimize public attention, sometimes allowing them to board slightly early or slightly late, so they are not standing in a crowded queue for an extended period of time. Security remains the single biggest factor shaping every trip William takes, whether commercial or private. Even decades ago, when William and Catherine were still newly married, and made headline-grabbing trips to destinations like Los Angeles, and later a tour of Australia and New Zealand, they traveled with substantial security teams, 7 officers for the Los Angeles trip and 11 for the tour of Australia. Numbers that have almost certainly grown in the years since as threats against public figures have evolved alongside advances in technology and social media tracking. These officers handle everything from route planning and hotel security sweeps to coordinating directly with local police forces in whatever country William happens to be visiting, ensuring that even seemingly spontaneous public appearances are, in reality, tightly choreographed events built around a security plan finalized long before William ever steps off the aircraft. Hotels and accommodations follow the same careful logic. Wherever William stays, whether on official business or a private family holiday, the properties chosen are selected specifically for their ability to offer privacy alongside comfort, often featuring private entrances, discreet staff trained to handle high-profile guests, and floors or wings that can be temporarily closed off to other guests during his stay. Even the luggage the royal family travels with is reportedly personalized in ways that make it instantly identifiable to staff managing logistics behind the scenes. A small but practical detail that helps prevent mix-ups when large amounts of baggage move through airports alongside a full security entourage. One particularly striking detail that has circulated for years concerns royal medical precautions during travel. Members of the royal family, including in past generations Queen Elizabeth and Prince Charles, have reportedly traveled with supplies of their own blood type on hand, carried by an accompanying royal physician in case of a medical emergency far from home, where matching blood might not be readily available. While details specific to William's own current practices are far less publicized than those of his grandmother's era, the broader tradition of the royal household planning meticulously for worst case, medical scenarios, during travel, remains a quiet, but real part of how these trips are organized, a reminder that royal travel planning goes far beyond simply booking a flight and packing a suitcase. Perhaps the most telling thing about how William travels today is that he reveals between two competing pressures on his life. On one hand, security experts and royal protection officers push constantly for maximum caution, favoring private jets, restricted routes, and heavy security details that keep him as insulated as possible from potential threats. On the other hand, William himself has shown a clear, sustained interest in appearing more relatable to the ordinary public than previous generations of royals. A motivation that likely explains his willingness to fly commercial, sit in business class rather than first, and occasionally slip onto a budget airline alongside people who have no idea who is sitting nearby. This balancing act between the instincts of a man haunted by his mother's death and the instincts of a future king trying to modernize an ancient institution defines nearly every trip William takes, whether the destination is a war memorial overseas, a charity engagement in Boston, or simply a family holiday far from the cameras. In the end, the secret to how Prince William travels is not really a secret at all. It is a careful, constantly evolving compromise between old royal tradition and modern public expectation, between the very real security threats facing one of the most recognizable men on the planet, and his own deep desire to raise his children with at least some sense of a normal life. Every flight, every motorcade, every quiet slip through a departure gate in a baseball cap, reflects decades of lessons learned the hardest way possible, and reflects a future king still trying, one carefully planned journey at a time, to figure out exactly what kind of monarchy he wants to lead, once the crown eventually passes to him.